Chapter 25. Monday evening. Also, Max said, have you put any more thought into your deck? Lots of thoughts. I've spent a fair bit of time walking around and looking at it, and I was thinking maybe either gravel and big thick mats alongside the house to stop the weeds right up to the gate at least. That makes sense, and I think we should price some of the materials we'll need. The problem with that, Doreen said, is that I don't really know what materials or how much materials. Right. I can probably help you with that. If we could get that much figured out, I can go in and talk to somebody, get a price quote. That would give me a place to start. Go to the hardware stores. Several are in town. Take in the materials list and a diagram, and they can do a cost analysis and give you a quote. That's what I figured. They finished their dinner, and then walked into the backyard with a tape measure and a notepad. They marked off the full measurements of the deck they had decided on. Now, Max said, take that to the hardware store and see if you can get an idea of what you need for materials. Obviously also check whether you'll have to pay for a delivery or do a lot of trips to pick it all up yourself. I know. I was thinking about that. I don't have any way to get heavy materials in. No, he said, but as I said, this isn't a terribly big job, but also not so small we can minimize the work going into it. Understood, she said with a smile. You might want to consider if you want to put a small deck back where we found the body. Or if you want, make that just patio straight down this side. She frowned. I guess I could take the deck right across at the same height, making it wider, and then have the stairs maybe curved stairs. Or is that too much? Mac shrugged his shoulders. It's not that it's too much. We'd have to consider the total cost. While he had that thought in mind, Mac got a call from the office and had to leave again. Doreen called her animals inside, and they all went upstairs to bed. Doreen fell asleep easily, dreaming about having a big deck and maybe a barbecue for herself. Tuesday morning. The next morning, she woke up bright and early. This time Goliath lay at her feet, Thaddeus sat on the nearby windowsill, and Muggs lay right across the pillow from her, his hot breath blowing into her now open eyes. She laughed. This was so much better than waking up married to her ex. Still smiling, she had a simple breakfast, since she was still partly full from the previous night. After that, she grabbed Muggs and headed to one of the big local hardware stores. It had been open for about an hour, but it wasn't busy yet. Carrying their plan, she went over to talk to the guys in one of the contractor areas. He half smiled at her. Can I help you? Yeah, I don't know anything about this stuff, but I'm trying to figure out how much the materials would cost for a deck like this. At that, she held up the picture Mac had helped her draw on graph paper. Interested, the clerk looked at it, and on a separate piece of paper wrote down how many cinder blocks she needed, how many braces, how many cross pieces, and how much decking board. You'll have to take a look at the railings too. The costs varies depending on style. Doreen's brain swirled with the information, but as she looked at the list, it seemed almost doable. And how much does this cost? Give me 5. I'll punch it in and get you an official quote. I'll hold it for 7 days. She looked at him in delight. Really? He nodded. We can get close enough that, if you decide to go ahead with the project, then you can just bring the quote back, and we can collect the materials for you and arrange delivery, if you want. How much would it cost to deliver all this? He looked down at it and asked, Are you in town? She nodded and gave him her address. $70 for all of it. She stared. That seems reasonable. It's why we do it, he said. You can't expect everybody to have a big truck and the time to do multiple loads. She nodded. Well, give me a quote then, and I'll mull it over. It took a little longer than 5 minutes for him to calculate the quote. Finally he printed it, signed it, dated it, and handed it to her. There you go. And with that, she gave him a delighted smile. She took Muggs and headed back to her car and home again. At home, she studied the quote and saw it was more than she had expected. It was $2,600, just over what she got in cash for the sale of the car parts. She scanned in the quote and emailed it to Mac. When he called her mid-morning, he said, "That's a decent price." "How do you figure?" she asked. "It's more than we were talking about. But we also extended the deck alongside the house where that garden bed is," he reminded her. "And we added in steps along that front piece so you can sit on them and look at the water." She nodded as she thought about it. "I guess we did. Do you think that's a decent quote?" "It is," he said. "If you want, though, you can go to another hardware store and get another quote. We can compare their prices afterward." "You think they'll come in cheaper?" "Some things will be cheaper, and some things will cost more money." "So then, what do we do?" "We have to figure out if you save enough by splitting up the orders and getting some things from one and some things from the other," he said cheerfully. "But keep in mind the delivery costs too, whether you can get the bigger stuff all delivered for the same $70 or whether you have to pay for 2 deliveries. Or maybe we can even do it all in one order, and I can go pick up the rest of the stuff." Stunned, she sat back and said, "There's more to this than I figured." Mac laughed at that.